I'm not dead, I'm still kicking. It's been a little while since I've uploaded a video, and I'm turning 30 about a week from now, 6 days from now. So let's talk about 30 things I've learned in my 30 years of life. I feel like that's consistent with what we've got on the channel so far, so let's do a bit of that. So I've written them out already. I'm not just going to reel them off the top of my head. So some of these I will expand on a bit after I've read them out. Some of them I feel like it's enough what I've written. And then some of them I've already talked about a bit on my Patreon. Any of the ones that I've talked about on Patreon already, the little Patreon icon's going to come up on the screen when I'm reading that one out, so you get a bit more of that one if you check out the Patreon. Anyway, let's jump into this. How a person speaks about themselves and how a person describes themselves are both data. How well both line up with their actions over time is even more valuable data. And it can tell you more about them than what they've told you about themselves. So following on from that first one, and some of these do sort of continue on as standalone things, but they connect up. So number 2, people show you who they are over time. You can't wear a mask forever. Let time show you them. Let those that deserve it earn your trust and vulnerability with consistency over time. You're not above it all. You're as human as the next person. Compassion is never too costly. What you do thereafter may be. Sometimes presence and a listening ear are the greatest gifts you can give. Not everything you feel means something grand about who you are as a person. Go through it. Don't run from it. Life is in the living, and half of it is in the feeling. Sometimes love really does mean letting someone go. Therapy isn't just for crazies, and honesty isn't just for deathbeds. Now that one is almost a song lyric. It could almost be in a song. I feel like it's all too easy to wait too long to be truthful. It's all too easy to wait too long to be honest with yourself. And, the more honest you are with yourself, the easier it is to be honest with others, I've found. And I think the life that really represents you and can be most meaningful and fulfilling, I think that's where it begins. That's something that I've found in my life, in my almost 30 years. How you feel about so much in life will be conflicted. Make space for that, and as gracefully as you can, hold both sides. That's something that multiple therapists have said to me in my life, because things are rarely simple. Things are rarely straightforward, and it's so easy to try to strong arm yourself into only feeling one way about something, but life's complicated, and there's got to be space for all of how you feel, not just the bits that you like, or the bits that are comfortable, or the bits that are consistent with how you see yourself, Your attachment wounds are gonna make some decisions for you until you're prepared to go through the pain of healing. That's self-explanatory. I don't need to say any more than that, but cherish the love you have and the people you have while you have them. So easy to take people for granted. Grief is for more than death. These are heavy. Some of these are heavy. I should have put a warning up at the beginning. Some of these are heavy, guys. If you weren't expecting that on this channel, I don't know what you were expecting, but some of these are heavy. Not all that glitters is gold. Nobody has all the answers. Everybody is wrong sometimes. Not all feelings require action. Some just need your presence. It's not always in your head. Sometimes it's in your body. Anxiety most of all. Now this one's blown my mind a little bit, like how much feelings can get stuck in your body, and how sometimes you can't think your way out of something. Maybe you can, but it's not best for you to try and think your way out of something, and it can be a lot harder, and it's almost like barking up the wrong tree, because sometimes the best thing you can do, I find when I'm feeling anxious, the best thing I can do for myself is go for a walk. Just go and just walk somewhere. Get out of the house, get out of that one spot I'm laying in on the sofa or something, and just go and do something that's it changes the way you think. And I remember reading something as well about the way that your eyes move while you're walking, that sort of scanning is not dissimilar from like REM sleep, which is like a processing mode in the brain. I don't know if there's much truth to that, but I remember reading it somewhere, and it made some sort of sense to me. I think my default mode, and I think a lot of us probably, you know, who've watched this channel, your default mode is going to be to try and like self-therapize your way out of it, which can so easily become rumination. But sometimes, you know, just doing something different, changing the way that you're moving, putting your mind onto something completely different, I think that can make such a big difference with especially anxiety, but I think a lot of feelings as well, because I know for me, like all of this kind of stuff that I was believing a while back, the idea of not just sitting down with my feelings and focusing on them until I was able to fix them or overcome them or transform them or transmute them or whatever the fuck in some way, the idea of not doing that was like avoidance, distraction. That's not good. You shouldn't do that. You should definitely only focus on how you're feeling and work through it in one way or another. But actually, there's so many ways to work through how you're feeling. There's so many ways to give how you're feeling space to sort of evolve in its own way. And I think a big part of that is just acknowledging and accepting how you're feeling. But sometimes it helps to change the record for a bit and then come back to it. Sometimes all you need is a good walk. That's what I found. That's a very long little rant on that one. Let's move on. Most things worth having require work to acquire and maintain, but don't mistake something that's requiring hard work as something being worth having, because it's not always the case. You can get into that way of thinking where you're like, things that are worth having are worth fighting for, right? But sometimes the fact that you're fighting so hard for something that should be quite straightforward and simple and easy, that in and of itself, I think, can be a sign that maybe that's not the right thing for you, you know? Sometimes it's just not right for you, and that's okay. It might be hard to come to terms with that. It can be a real challenge, I've found that, but sometimes it's just not right for you. Beware the lies you tell yourself when you're feeling things. Look for the people you feel at ease with and make time for them. And this next one, I'm paraphrasing, I think, from my dad. So thanks, Dad. Tragedy plus time equals humour. And his little thing he adds to that is, if you want to live a good life, try and shorten the time bit between the tragedy and the humour. I don't feel like I'm through my recovery from something until I can look back on it and appreciate the positive as well as the negative, you know? That's, for me, that's a sign that I'm healing from something. So on with the next one. Love isn't always good for you, and love isn't always enough. Don't be afraid to let loose and have some fun. It's like most things, it takes practice when you're not used to it. Now that's such a strange thing to write down, and it's even stranger to read back. But I feel like I've struggled to have fun in my life quite often, because I get so like laser focused on ideas. And I mean, you might be similar, you know, you're watching this channel for a reason. Maybe you're also the kind of person that gets way too intense about some things sometimes, and you know, easily done if you have that kind of a disposition. So I think sometimes I need to remind myself to just take a step back and just have some fun, just enjoy myself. Like, there's nothing wrong with just doing something just because it's fun. It doesn't have to always be for some important reason or because you're learning and growing or something. Like, sometimes fun is okay. These are the things you're supposed to learn as a kid, but apparently I didn't get the memo on that one. Or somewhere along the way, it just I got a bit lost there and forgot it. Most people really are just doing their best, even if it looks different to yours. When you feel bad, your brain makes you want to do things that make you feel worse. Do what you know helps instead. That one I got from Julie Smith's book, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? Brilliant book. Highly recommend that one. I've mentioned that too much, I think, to my patrons. Fantastic book though. Really, honestly worth checking that one out. Nobody knows you better than you know yourself, but you will never know yourself completely. Be open to learning more always. I think we're always going to have blind spots, no matter how well we know ourselves. And other people are going to see things about us that we don't see in ourselves. But equally, we're going to see things in ourselves that other people don't see in us because they're not in here, they're not on the inside of this strange inner world that we each possess. So remembering that, the gaps between the way we see ourselves and other people see us, but also the opportunities that those differences in perspective can present, I think that can be really useful, really important. If you want to learn new things about who you are, go where nobody knows you. This is one that I spent 8 years learning, this little point. I lived out in Mexico for 8 years, and I knew one person when I moved out there. And I think one of the most fascinating insights I gained from living out there was around who I actually am, around the way that I respond to things when there's nobody around me expecting me to respond to things in a certain way. I think that's one of the most interesting things. For anyone who's travelled alone or anyone who's lived abroad on their own, I think you could probably understand what I'm getting at there, because I think normally in your life, you've got so many people who are like subtly reinforcing patterns, which there's positives to, definitely, But I do think that when you're out in an environment where you don't actually have that, you don't have brilliant, where you don't have people around you who are telling you in one form or another, verbally, non-verbally, whatever, to be consistent with who they expect you to be, to behave the way you've always behaved in one way or another. And there's also like the social element of that as well, where there are expectations within social groups, and then the cultural element if you move to another country, where there's expectations within culture, etc., etc. I think when you go to a new place and you sort of put yourself in an environment for long enough that the reinforcement of those patterns from other people seems to sort of wear off a little bit, then you get to experience what sort of bubbles up naturally out of you in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So that's been a really interesting thing for me, it has to be said. So next one, beware the quick fixes, the panacea and the charismatic. They are not the oases they appear to be. Now that one, again, I feel like that's one of the self-explanatory ones, especially here on this channel. But the point of it feeling like an oasis in otherwise a desert of connection, or meaning, or direction, or hope, I think that's a feeling that I have understood more since coming away from the kind of, quick fixes, panacea, charismatic people, one-size-fits-all ideologies. I've come to understand that more, because proper connection in this day and age with technology and consumerism and just so many reasons to not connect, so many opportunities not to connect and to distract ourselves and to sort of cling to vices that give us opportunities to disconnect from the moment in one way or another, the present moment. All of those kinds of things, I think, they sort of incentivize a dearth of real meaningful connection. And as I'm saying that now, I'm thinking, I don't know that that's necessarily ever been anything other than that in the past, because while now we're definitely at a place where we're more open to different ways of living and individuality being expressed in one way or another that we hadn't really been as open to in the past, I don't think that our ability to be emotionally present has necessarily gotten worse as time's gone on. I just think that it just isn't mainstream yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, so often those connections where you can really feel felt by someone and that someone else can feel that way from you are so valuable, but because they are somewhat rare, at least that's what I've found, and if anyone disagrees with me and says no, they're not, I'm glad, because that's a really good thing. Hopefully there are many people out there who have access to that kind of depth of connection that I'm speaking about there. But the point I'm making is, if it's not, rare to have that kind of a connection, then there are at least pockets within which that kind of a connection is hard to maintain or access. Because of that, I think that these kinds of groups they provide something that feels like an oasis. That's what I was getting to. They feel like an oasis in the desert. It feels like, oh, finally someone gets me, finally someone understands me. And that's quite often love bombing, you know. I mean, we know how that goes, we know what that looks like. If you've been watching this channel long enough, we've talked about that before, you know. But it really is that kind of a feeling, that when you're struggling to feel understood or feel like there's a connection with people around you, and then something comes along that is geared towards making you feel like they get you and that they connect with you because of some ulterior motive in one way or another, then that's a tricky thing to navigate. But I think it's good to remember that sometimes those feelings can arise in not so good circumstances. That said, following on from that, the next one, and this is one of my favourite ones from this whole list, and it's the 29th one on the list, so I'm still 29 now as I'm recording this, so it feels fitting that it's my favourite one here. Sincerity is not cringe. I cannot stress that enough. I feel that so deeply and so strongly, because there's, especially the younger generation, there's such an avoidance of real sincerity, like unironic sincerity. So sincerity is not cringe. It is the lifeblood of intimacy. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the bedrock of intimacy. These are things I wish I could stand on the rooftops and just scream, because they're so, I feel them so deeply, and I stand by those words. I will stand by those words, I think, until the day I die. And hopefully that means something, because I'll live for a long time. It won't mean as much if I don't make it to 30, but let's hope I have a good week. Anyway, so the final one on this list, number 30, is in part a quote from Doctor Who. So any Whovians here, I hope you'll appreciate this. Hate is always foolish, and love is always wise. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. I've got hair in my mouth. Killed the moment, didn't it? Laugh hard, run fast, and be kind. And it's just started to absolutely piss it down while I was reading that last one. We're getting a bit of thunder here, which is nice. We're paying for the nice weather we've had lately. And if you made it this far in the video, you've watched this far, drop a comment below and say banana, right? Because that, like we've done this before, right? It will confuse everyone who hasn't made it this far in the video. They'll be like, why is everyone putting banana? And then we'll be part of like a cool club, because like we know, right? So do that in the comments below. So obviously this video is come out of nowhere probably for you. Obviously I knew it was coming because I've sort of planned it and I've sat here and recorded it and that. But yeah, a bit of a surprise. I won't be back to regular uploads, just letting you know that now in case that's something that you were expecting. I'm not sure when I'll upload again, and I'm not sure what the videos will consist of, but I hope that this video gives you hope that if I do upload, then they'll be worth watching. Anyway, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one, whenever that may be.